What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, check this out. We're just going to dive right on into it just because why not? U.S. could run short of money to pay its bills by August without a debt limit deal, CBO says. Actually, that is not true. We can just print our way into oblivion. Thank you guys for watching. Y'all let me know what y'all think. That's all I got for this one. I want to thank everybody for watching, and y'all try to have a good day. And I'm just kidding, y'all. This is insane. We are getting to a problem in this country, y'all. We have been getting to this problem for a while, for a good long while. Somehow a miracle happened. I think in 1996 they actually balanced the budget. Yeah, we have deficit spending for a long time before that. 1996, I believe, under Bill Clinton. You know, Bill Clinton cut 500,000 employees from the federal government, and at the time I think there was only like, I don't know, 1.25 million employees, something like that, 1.25 million employees. So cutting the staff by that much was insane. And Donald Trump is getting railed against for cutting 15,000 here, 30,000 here, 40,000. Huh? Like, are you serious? The federal government has over 2 million employees at this point. That's nuts. And then not to mention that we have a $1.8 trillion deficit spending problem. I talk about this all the time. I talk about it all the time because I was just gritting my teeth, yelling, screaming, throwing crap at the camera, you know, pretty much the entire Biden administration. Of course, I wasn't on YouTube for the entirety of the Biden administration, just the past, I don't know, the last year or so, something like that. And I'm like, it was every day. It's like, oh my God. You know, the deficit spending went from $1.5 trillion to $1.7 trillion to $1.8 trillion. And it's like, what in the F is going on here? And you know what? If it wasn't for the Supreme Court, Joe Biden's outgoing deficit spending number would have been $2.25 trillion. Wrap your face around that for a second. $2.25 trillion deficit spending. Biden did not care. I said it all the time, right? And the longtime viewers of this channel will know that, and you're about to hear it again, Joe Biden, it was kind of like he was walking through the White House on his way out the door, and he's got this nice leather, you know, designer jacket. It's like a vest, right? Really, really nice. It's got gold trim and all this other nice stuff, and he's got this jacket on. But the problem with the jacket is it's got a bunch of hooks attached to it all over the place. And those hooks have grenades hanging off of them. And Joe Biden is grabbing a grenade, pulling the pin, and throwing it behind him on his way out the door, destroying this country in the process. I always said that, and I still believe that till this day. Right? They love to talk about how Donald Trump, you know, what was it, $7 trillion. He raised the debt by $7 trillion. Well, you know what? Joe Biden did the exact same thing. Obama raised the debt by $10 trillion. And you might say, well, that was over 8 years. Trump did it in only 4. Well, yeah, Joe Biden did the exact same thing in the same amount of time. And you know what that was after? Right? Trump has an excuse, somewhat, partially. I give him somewhat of an out because of COVID. And he believed in his mind that he had to spend that money. If you look at the graph, which this article has a graph, and we will get to that point, but if you look at the graph, Trump's numbers go kind of up, kind of up, kind of up, and then shoot way up right at the end. Yeah, that was COVID spending. Joe Biden's is just a straight line freaking up, just all the way up. It's nuts, but we'll get to that. We will get to that definitely, y'all. Let's get into this right quick because I could probably talk about this for minutes, at least minutes. The United States is on track to hit its statutory debt ceiling, the so-called X date, when the country runs short of money to pay its bills, as early as August without a deal between lawmakers and the White House, according to a Congressional Budget Office report Wednesday. By that time, the government would no longer have enough of a financial cushion to pay its bills after exhausting its extraordinary measures, whatever that is, the accounting maneuvers used to stretch existing funds. Washington would risk defaulting on its debt unless Congress and Republican President Donald Trump. Why do they do that? We know Donald Trump is a Republican. Why add that in there? agree to lift the borrowing limit or abolish the debt ceiling concept altogether. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. That is the height of fiscal irresponsibility. Maybe. I really don't know. I'm not an economist, but it doesn't sound very smart. I mean, think about this. Think about you only make so much money a week, right? And then you go and work out some sort of deal with a credit card company that says you have no limit on the debt you can pile up. How do you think that's going to go for you? Eventually, you're going to pile up so much debt, you can't pay that note. Yeah. I'm just saying, I know that's a rudimentary understanding of the economy and how debts work and all that. And I understand the government can print money and blah, 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 blah. Sure, fine, whatever. Make your arguments you want to make. But does it sound smart? No, it doesn't. Doesn't matter if it is smart. It doesn't sound smart. It's not fiscally responsible. I don't care who you are. I don't care how smart of an economist you are. It doesn't make sense to destroy your debt, your credit limit, essentially. Because what are you going to do with that? You're going to rack up debt. And that's not a good idea, especially considering 36 point something trillion dollar debt. We're almost at 37, y'all. I think. So we reached 36 a while back. Although they say it's 36.1 right there. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The debt limit was reinstated January 2nd following its suspension by Congress in the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023. The Treasury has already reached the current debt limit of $36.1 trillion, so it has no room to borrow under its standard operating procedures, according to the CBO report. You know what? I don't buy that number. I'm going to fact check that right quick. Okay, so come to find out that's not really true. It's close, but it's not really true. As a matter of fact, I recorded a little video. I'm going to put the little debt clock right there. Let that play out as I keep going. An analysis released on Monday by the Bipartisan Policy Center estimates that the U.S. could run out of cash by mid-July if Congress does not raise or suspend the nation's debt limit. Trump had previously demanded that a provision raising or suspending the debt limit, something that his own party routinely resists, be included in legislation to avert the last potential government shutdown. Anything else is a betrayal of our country, Trump said in a statement in December. That deal did not address the debt limit. Now, here is that little graph, if you will. Notice it slightly goes up just steadily under Bush, and then Obama, it kind of shoots up real quick, and then it's just going up at a much faster rate, and then it gets to Trump, right? And you see that, and it's going up at kind of the same rate, but then it kind of tanks off a little bit, and then boom, it just shoots all the way up, and it's like, damn, Trump, what the hell? That's COVID spending. Absurd, y'all. And I didn't like that whatsoever. Don't like spending money. But, you know, Trump was on track to do not so bad. As a matter of fact, he was on average with Obama, but still not good. But our economy was booming, right? We were expanding much faster as an economy. People had money. We were making money hand over fist. We were doing swimmingly. We were doing well. I was making a lot of money. I got so many raises during that first Trump term. I went from like $14 an hour, blew past $20 an hour, and I've been there ever since. As a matter of fact, I haven't gotten much of a raise. I've gotten less than $1 raise over the entirety of the Biden administration. Less than $1. Yeah, that's right. It's absurd, y'all. Really is absurd. And then look at Biden. It's almost, like if you look at that, it's almost the COVID spending, his entire thing. It just rises and rises and rises. It's just getting absurd and absurd and absurd. The debt is going up so high. Bush was actually not doing bad compared to everybody else because Bush had an 8-year term, right? So he goes from, what is that, about 6 trillion to 9 trillion. No, 11. Sorry, I looked at the graph wrong. About 11 trillion. That's not bad. That's, 7 trillion over an 8-year period. Obama goes from 11 to 20. That's almost 10 trillion freaking dollars. And then Trump goes from 20 to 28, roughly. And then Biden from 28 to 36. It's absurd, y'all. It really is. It's just getting out there. Really crazy. Experts say an extended default period could result in the loss of millions of jobs and an economic Don't know. I'm going to insert my own bias into this and just say collapse, apocalypse. I'm going to add that because they just ended it right there. I don't know if you guys can see that on the screen, but yeah, an economic period. I'm going to say an apocalypse, and an absolute economic apocalypse, because that's exactly what that would be, or a collapse. Once again, it would be terrible if we default. We would go the way of the Soviet Union, as a matter of fact. So this is why I'm constantly railing, gnashing my teeth about our spending problems in this country. We waste so many dollars on all kinds of stuff. And you got the left over here griping, whining about getting able to purchase sodas on Snap. It's like, what is wrong with you people? That is a handout. You do not get to dictate to the person giving you something what that person gives you. I can't stand this. It pisses me off until no end. Like, food stamps are supposed to be necessities, and they were meant to be just temporary, right? Just until you can get yourself back on your feet to where you can take care of yourself. Because Big Daddy Government is not created and is not there to take care of you. It's just there to ensure your safety and make sure your rights are being upheld. That's all they're meant to be, right? Keep a military. Yeah, that's for your safety. Keep your borders secure, which we couldn't do that under Biden for some reason. They're not meant to subsidize your way of life. But we do this constantly in this country. Why? Because we're a rich nation. We have the extra cash and we can do so. But currently, we're spending in a deficit. That means they have to print money to fund the government to make all this stuff work, which devalues the dollar. And then people cry about the cost of everything. Well, that's because of places like SNAP, Social Security, things like that. These entitlement programs. Social Security is kind of not really, but it kind of is, right? But Medicare, Medicaid, the food stamp program, all this government entitlement programs, they're doing most of that in a deficit, right? Because they have to fund these agencies. These agencies are overbloated, right? We could fund Medicare and Medicaid and all that other stuff if we didn't have a federal government, right? If the federal government was teeny, we could fund all this. But it's not, is it? 2+ million employees. And we've got so many agencies, I can't even count them all. Half of them I didn't even know about. I didn't even know the Small Business Administration was a thing until like a year ago, something like that. It's like Small Business Administration. What do they even do? No, they give out grants and loans to small businesses. That's pretty much it. But it's like, what is wrong with our lawmakers, y'all? These people are in charge. They could say, no, this is insane. I mean, think about it. Let me know down in the comments right off. How could you sign off on $2 trillion deficit spending in good conscience? Then go back to your constituents back home and say, I'm fighting for you. This is why I call most Democrats insane. Because they fight. They say, we're going to get all these entitlements and you're going to get free health care and all this other socialist crap. And then they go to Washington, spend in a deficit to screw you over, essentially. It's Republicans and Democrats alike. Because Republicans just do it in the inverse. At least, though, they're trying to show some sort of fiscal responsibility and say, we don't need these entitlements. We're going to go fight for you, but they don't really fight for you. They fight for the lobby interests in this country, which is absurd. But, before I get off on another rant, let's keep going. Government payments to millions of families probably would go unpaid, including to Social Security beneficiaries, veterans, and military families. There could be disruptions to operations such as air traffic control and food safety. You love how they're trying to tug at your heartstrings. Oh, all these interruptions to these government subsidies for your way of life could go unpaid. Of course. How do you think we got here in the first place, y'all? It's these entitlements. Jesus. Given these consequences, Congress and presidents have always found a way, even at the last minute, to avoid a default. Yeah, by kicking the freaking can down the road and saying, we're going to put this debt off on your children. That's what they said back in the 90s, I guess. Ever since they balanced the budget and then decided to start deficit spending again. Those people. Because it only gets worse and worse and worse. Budgets increase, blah, 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 and it just piles on and piles on and piles on. And it's absurd. It's a never-ending chain. You've got to make some drastic cuts at this point. And this is what Donald Trump is trying to do. And Democrats are absolutely trying to stop him from doing it. And then they're trying to make him look evil in the process, which is even worse. It's much worse. Right? At least he says, look, we want to try to save Social Security. We want to try to save Medicare, Medicaid, these programs. But we got to make some cuts somewhere. And Democrats say, no. No, he's evil for doing so. No, he just sees all of this that's going on with the debt, the debt limit, printing money, the value of the dollar, everything that's going on. He sees we got a problem here. We got a major problem here. Something has to be done. Something drastic has to be done. Is it going to be nice? No, it's not. People are going to go without their entitlements. Yes, sorry about that. You've been suckling on the government teat for way too long. It's insane, y'all. It really is. The nation has been through several protracted debt ceiling fights between congressional Democrats and Republicans, including in 2011 and in 2023, when lawmakers suspended the debt limit through January 1st, 2025, rather than raising the debt ceiling by a dollar amount. After the debt limit was reinstated in January, in one of her last acts as Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen said Treasury would institute extraordinary measures intended to prevent the U.S. from reaching the debt ceiling. Since then, the Treasury Department has stopped paying into certain accounts, including a slew of federal workers' pensions and disability funds, to make up for the shortfall in money. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has continued to notify Congress about the use of extraordinary measures in an effort to prevent a breach of the debt ceiling. Yes, something has to be done once again. And now, because of these same people, Janet Yellen and all the predecessors before that, even under Trump, because those were bad people, as a matter of fact. These people just cut off their foot to spite their face for some reason. They said, we're going to kick the can down the road and put this on the next generation. That's what they did, essentially. That's what these extraordinary measures were. Just kicking the freaking can down the road. The CBO estimates that if the debt limit remains unchanged, then the government's ability to borrow using extraordinary measures will probably be exhausted in August or September 2025. The projected exhaustion date is uncertain because the timing and the amount of revenue collections and outlays over the intervening months could differ from CBO's projections. The House added a $4 trillion increase in the debt ceiling as part of a Republican budget plan that sets the stage for extending the individual tax cuts passed in Trump's first term. But the Senate will have to agree to that increase, and it's unclear at this point whether the Republican-led chamber will do so. GOP leadership in both the House and the Senate continue to negotiate on a path forward, with the latest meeting Tuesday at the White House. Democrats say they are willing to work with Republicans on a debt ceiling increase, but not as a pretext to deliver tax cuts that they say will most help the wealthiest Americans at the expense of those who rely on important safety net programs. Once again, like I said, the Democrats are insane. Yeah, tax cuts help everybody. Just because they help the wealthy doesn't mean they don't help the small guy. Once again. But Democrats, they want to, let's figure out some sort of way we can raise the debt ceiling and keep printing all this money so you can get your entitlements, y'all. Democrats are ready to work across the aisle to prevent a catastrophic default, but Republicans must work with us to protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, said Pennsylvania Rep. Brendan Boyle, the ranking Democrat on the House Budget Committee. Yeah, the Democrats are absolutely insane. They want to try to keep all these entitlements intact and still somehow make up $1.8 trillion. How? How are you going to do this? You're not going to be able to. That is way too much spending to try to make up with some, a Doge cuts here and there. What Doge is doing is definitely not going to make this up. Definitely not. Something has to give, right? Cutting out the education department. Hey, that's good. That's what, $30 billion a year? Ish? Maybe? That's nowhere near 1.8. That is nowhere near that. Cutting USAID. That's $43 billion. Once again, nowhere near what is needed, folks. This is why I don't get the corporate press narrative. They are trying to run this country into the ground. I mean, I see an economic collapse on this country's future. And these people, they want to try to keep everything together, keep all this stuff intact, and just keep kicking the can down the road. You can't keep kicking the can down the road. Every road comes to an end at some point. Seriously. Like, these people decided they were going to continue kicking the can down the road, and they made a turn on a dead-end street. That's what happened. When they decided to just continually lift this debt ceiling and continue to keep spending in a deficit, that was that right-hand turn. There was a dead-end sign right there. They looked right at it, y'all. Democrats and Republicans alike. They saw that dead-end sign, and they said, you know what? I'm going to kick that can anyway. Because this road, I can't see the end of it yet. Yeah, and that's exactly what's been going on since 1996, I guess. And it's just getting it outright insane. I mean, we could save this country, but we need to take drastic measures. Donald Trump is attempting to do this, and the corporate press and Democrats are fighting tooth and nail to stop him. This is one of the most evil acts I think I've ever seen in the history of me doing this channel, right? Which honestly, it hasn't been that long. But it's just insane what Democrats, they want to try to keep all this stuff intact. And you can't. I'm sorry. We cannot keep spending this much money. And I know I keep repeating myself, but I can't help it because it's just so insane to me that they're like, yep, we got to keep Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, y'all. Social Security isn't paying for itself. It's never paid for itself. And I don't see how it can continue unless people start paying more into it. And who wants to do that? We're talking about tax cuts here. Trump's talking about tax cuts. Where are we going to make this money up, y'all? I do not know. I mean, they have plans. They have measures they can take to help. And Trump knows a lot more about economics than I do. So, once again, I'll leave it in his capable hands because what he seems to be doing, to me, seems to be moving in the right direction. And if you saw my last video, the majority of the country seems to believe that as well, that we seem to be moving in the right direction here. But I don't get the corporate press and Democrats and their narrative that Trump is evil and all these cuts, firing all these employees. This is a bad thing, y'all. I don't get that. How is it bad? What is bad is keeping the government bloated and continually expanding all these entitlement programs and this nonsense, and thinking that we're going to stay afloat. Once again, folks, if your ship runs into an iceberg, you've got some major problems, and I think that's what has happened. We've hit the iceberg. We need to seal off that compartment. But Democrats say, no, hang on. There's people still in there. We've got to save those people that are still in that compartment of the ship. And you know what? In Democrats' efforts to save those people, it's going to sink the whole freaking ship. Because they don't want to seal that hatch off and sacrifice those people to save the rest of the country. And it's absurd, y'all. It's like, what decision do you make, though, right? That's an extreme situation, but it's kind of apt. It's applicable, if you will, because we're not actually talking about sacrificing people, but we're talking about sacrificing entitlement programs, government spending, government bloat. That's what we're sacrificing here. And I think that's sacrificable, if you will. But, that's just me. Y'all let me know what y'all think. That's all I got on this one. I want to thank everybody for watching, and y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.